When I got the news that Hunter had made his exit, I remember thinking almost immediately, the cannon. We got to do the cannon.
When the going gets weird, the weird turn professional. On the 25th of February 2005, an outlaw died in Woody Creek, Colorado. Streaming onto his farm one cold night for the brave outlaw's funeral were personalities from every walk of life. A sheriff from the local town, a member of the Hells Angels motorcycle gang, an American senator, John Kerry, actors including Johnny Depp and Bill Murray, a former presidential candidate, George McGovern, writers including Ken Casey, journalists including Rolling Stone magazine founder Jan Wenner. These wildly different personalities, and many more, had come together to celebrate the life, literature, and legacy of a single man, Hunter S. Thompson. Before them all stood a huge cannon, shaped in the image of the Gonzo fist, the two-thumbed symbol of Thompson's very own style of writing. Bikie and senator alike stood awestruck, for the bizarre hallucinogenic symbol stood 2 feet taller than the Statue of Liberty. Soon to shoot the ashes of its creator into the cool night air, its towering mass was a symbol of the larger-than-life existence that Thompson embodied. More importantly, the fist served as an indomitable reminder of Thompson's sweeping literary legacy, of his unmatched coverage and critique of society during his time, and of the unique style of writing that helped him propagate it. Members of the panel, test your extensive literary knowledge for a moment. How many writers received such an attendance at their funeral? How many have successfully written about everything from the Hells Angels and the dope scene of San Francisco to Super Bowls and presidential elections? How many formed their own style of writing, with a logo to boot? Ladies and gentlemen, there is only one. His name is Hunter Thompson, and it is a travesty that he is not included in the Literary Pop Culture Hall of Fame. But where did this all begin? How did Thompson, a simple journalist, become such a popular, inspiring, and influential figure? It all began with a war, a dead president, and a large number of very angry people. The 60s and 70s were a turbulent time in American history. There was always 2 great moral pressures, the Vietnam War and civil rights. Counterculture movements and anti-war demonstrations culminated in protests and killings that exacerbated feelings of fear and loathing in American society. In capturing the socio-political upheaval of the time, traditional journalism was found to be comprehensively unsuited to the task. A who, what, where, when, why style of reporting could not begin to capture the anger of a Black Power movement, or the euphoria of a Woodstock. For an audience either deeply concerned or directly involved in the changes going on in America, it was necessary to report events from the inside out. Fortunately, a wild and eclectic young journalist by the name of Hunter Thompson was about to do just that, and rock the foundations of journalism in the process. As things stand now, I'm going to be a writer. I'm not sure that I'm going to be a good one, or even a self-supporting one, but until the dark thumb of fate presses me to the dust and says, "You are nothing," I will be a writer. Thompson's wild and eclectic personality drove a unique perspective that gave voice to the marginalized in American society. Is this, ladies and gentlemen, not the greatest power that our literature can hold? And yet too often, Thompson is portrayed as a wild and unpredictable celebrity, rather than as a skilled craftsman of words. This portrayal, esteemed panelists, is a complete fallacy. To focus on Hunter's wild side might reveal to us his anti-authoritarianist nature, but we would be ignoring the value that these traits evinced. Only through his eclectic nature could Thompson have influenced so many people. His interests were immense and spanned journalism, sports, film, rock and roll, literature, and politics. More than just a writer, his iconic Freak Power movement nearly won him the position of Sheriff of Aspen, shaking the political foundations of the city and pointing the way towards his literary future. His vast knowledge also gave him an edge over other journalists at the time. Despite gaining fame as a fierce critic of Richard Nixon, he was the only journalist that Nixon invited for an interview for a portion of his presidential campaign. Of course, it was because Nixon wanted to ride with someone who could talk football, and the other reporters, political nuts obviously, were hopeless. His anti-authoritarianism and wild streak culminated in a revolutionary book that would forever enshrine him as the outlaw journalist. Hell's Angels, the strange and terrible saga of the outlaw motorcycle gang, changed perceptions about motorcycle gangs forever. With this book he had, by eliminating the imaginary wall between the subject and the observer, revolutionized modern journalism.
That varies anywhere from, I'd say, 100 to 200.
Hunter infiltrated his story. He considered himself a photojournalist. In his early applications for jobs, he was always looking to be a photographer.
The sight of a photographer invariably whips the angels into a kissing frenzy. This is a guaranteed square jolt, and the angels are gleefully aware of the reaction it gets. They can't stand it, says Terry. It blows their minds every time, especially the tongue bit.
It is one of the bravura pieces of reporting of all time. He actually, as they say, ran with the angels, for he was embedded. He was embedded in the Hells Angel Battalion.
In a time when objective journalism was breeding hysteria in America, the book sold hundreds of thousands of copies. It was an incredibly unique and powerful text, largely because Thompson abandoned the concept of journalistic distance in favor of a more immersive approach, and one he believed would eliminate many of the problems he saw in the current news media. He was the only journalist willing to put himself in danger for the story, and he formed a unique perspective that dispelled many myths surrounding the gang. How many of us would be so daring as to join the Hells Angels gang simply to gain an honest perspective from within their ranks? How many of us could be so dedicated to writing as to put our very lives in danger? It was Thompson's personality that drove his unique perspective, one that is worthy to be honored in this Hall of Fame. A quote found on the website created by Thompson's widow, Anita, epitomizes the source of Hunter's success. With every page you read of Hunter's work, your own personal strength is invigorated. Confidence is what most readers often describe as their first benefit from reading his work. This was a strength enshrined in the word gonzo.
Hunter S. Thompson, a friend of yours, you met him late in his life.
Yep.
And we were talking about this earlier. In the literary firmament, contemporary literary firmament, where would we place Hunter S. Thompson?
I mean, for me, I think Hunter is one of the most, without question, one of the most important writers of the 20th century. He reinvented a style of writing by putting himself into the situation, by living it. This
was the phrase, the gonzo journalism style?
Hunter Thompson was, by the law of nature, a writer. In youth, he spent hours laboriously copying pages of Faulkner and Fitzgerald, trying to unravel the genius of their rhythms. Curtis Robinson, Thompson's former editor, even recalls the time he spent 18 hours looking for a synonym for a single word. His dedication to writing paid off. Together with his unique personality, he formed a style of writing that would revolutionize current affairs in America. With gonzo journalism, Thompson created a character, an attitude, a voice, and arguably a genre to deploy it, an audience to enjoy it, and an entire era to go along with it.
So what's gonzo journalism? Gonzo journalism is a style of journalism epitomized perhaps best by the work of Hunter S. Thompson in the 1970s. Unlike conventional journalism, gonzo journalism doesn't even try to be objective or fair or balanced. In fact, it says that objectivity is a myth and that striving for objectivity actually just gets in the way of telling the real story, the true story. So, for example, when Rolling Stone magazine sent Hunter S. Thompson to cover the 1972 presidential election, well, he liked McGovern, but he called Humphrey a hopeless old political hack. So, and did so just outright. That would get an ordinary journalist fired. He also just wrote the unvarnished experience of the campaign trail, day to day, drunkenness and all. I suppose. Maybe a modern example of gonzo journalism would be the recent documentary Super Size Me, where the author and director and star of the film spent a month just eating nothing day in and day out except McDonald's fast food. And then he documented the effects this had on his body and on his mood and temperament and all sorts of things. It's journalism where the journalist inserts himself or herself into the story and becomes part of the story. And the journalist's observations and emotions and feelings and direct personal experiences all become part of the story. That's anathema in traditional day-to-day journalism.
The literary merits of gonzo journalism run deep. An amalgamation of various literary techniques, Thompson writes in the tradition of realism, but borrows tools from tall tales, naturalism, and Enlightenment essays. Ladies and gentlemen, the skill and dedication it would take to form an intrinsically unique style of writing is phenomenal. It is unfathomable that Thompson has not been acknowledged for this immense contribution to literature. If you are still not convinced, listen to the words of John Hellman, a renowned critic of modern literature. He asserts that Thompson has extended the possibilities of new journalism and of contemporary literature in general. The nervous rhythms, shifting focus, hyperbolic imagery, extreme presentness, and yet parodic control of this verbal instrument is Thompson's major literary innovation. The unique immersion gonzo necessitates gives it an authentic and powerful perspective, one that proved to be a necessary and influential tool in capturing the tumultuous socio-political climate of the 1960s. It was the answer to the fear and loathing Thompson and many other people felt concerning the radically dizzying changes of the time. Gonzo journalism jarred, provoked, and compelled readers to see strange situations in a new light. A fundamental core of a democratic society, and a clear indication of Thompson's unmatched ability as a writer in this period. His influence is evident in his third major book, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail 72. Covering the political turmoil of the 1972 presidential election, Thompson broke away from the pack journalist mentality, and as a result immortalized his legendary ability to present one of the most brutally honest accounts of arguably the most turbulent period in American history. His writing offered an outlook that objective journalism failed to cover. Indeed, there is more to truth than facts. We must remember interpretation, ideology, and emotion, gut instincts and violent reactions, first impressions and compassions. By providing these elements of the human condition, Gonzo proved hugely influential in documenting the campaign and contributed in a significant way to George McGovern's unexpected rise to prominence. Thompson not only wrote fantastic pieces of writing, he proved to the world that our beloved literature could be used as an immense apparatus for social change. The voice that Thompson presented is undoubtedly a highly important one, and one that assures his induction into this Hall of Fame. Indeed, even George McGovern offers his thoughts on Hunter.
Hunter had a rare and original insight into the underlying forces that were operating in that campaign.
Through Gonzo, Thompson had offered a view of the world that proved both incisive and highly creative, clearly displaying his worthiness for this esteemed Hall of Fame. And yet, the way in which this idea continues to be applied to modern-day current affairs and worldwide popular culture reveals the deeper understanding that qualifies Thompson for this Hall of Fame. Thompson's remarkable legacy will survive us all. A testament to his character, Thompson has been the subject of 3 major motion pictures, expanding his pop culture influence. Thompson was, by all accounts, a pop culture and literary icon. He is both the author of extensive and influential literature and the inspiration for films, cartoons, and characters. These include the character Dr. Gonzo in the Doonesbury comic strips, the naming of a Muppet Gonzo, known for his eccentricity, and a character in the highly successful DC comic Transmetropolitan. He's even been represented on the front page of the Rolling Stone magazine numerous times. As for his Gonzo style, that too has permeated throughout our popular culture. It has transcended its status as a form of journalism and can refer to anything that is outlandish or outrageous. University lecturer Kevin Hunt offers his own academic perspective on the topic. Gonzo has penetrated into the mainstream culture of society. It can be applied to a broad range of topics, and is not just a form of creative literature, but a way of expression. As a result, it has influenced topics ranging from Judaism and scientific practice to marketing models, photography, and many others. What is remarkable about these associations, Hunt asserts, is that in each of these areas, Thompson has been directly acknowledged as an inspirational figure. Clearly, Thompson's eclecticism lives on. In our era of fake news and biased media coverage, as writers ourselves, it is time we acknowledge Thompson's contribution to accurate and reliable journalism. Journalism that does not attempt to hide behind a false veil of objectivity. Certainly, some of us have already followed in Hunter's footsteps. Another Rolling Stone reporter, Evan Wright, used the concepts of gonzo journalism to write a highly influential and entertaining book, Generation Kill, which highlighted the gruesome nature of the Second Gulf War and the peculiar culture of the young men that fought it. The book was even turned into a popular TV miniseries by HBO. On a global scale, gonzo is utilized by European writers such as Arnon Grunberg and Islamic writers such as Michael Muhammad Knight. Far from being limited to American society, it has roots in Europe, the Americas, Africa, and Asia. It remains an important means of expression, a way for writers to present an alternative view to contemporary journalism, and an important perspective on socio-political affairs. He didn't just create a new form of journalism, he created a new way of thinking that is still important in today's society. While Hunter may be gone, his style of literature remains, largely in thanks to his unique personality and his vehement socio-political commentary. His legacy has enriched all our lives, whether you have read him or not. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why he must be inducted into our Hall of Fame. Hunter once said that life should not be a journey to the grave, with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride." But Thompson was more than just a passenger on his journey through life. He was the roller coaster itself, and his work will continue to thrill audiences for years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed panelists, our next course of action is clear. Do not allow the legacy of our Hall of Fame to be tainted by Thompson's absence. Honor this great man, whose personality was so vast and wild that he rode with Hell's Angels and movies were made of him, whose ability to capture the ethos of his period, influence political campaigns, and change perspectives in American society, and whose authentic style has surpassed its creator and remains an important medium of communication throughout the world. It is beyond doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that this larger-than-life literary hero has led the charge of modern-day writers. His worthiness for inclusion in this Hall of Fame is beyond doubt.